Hello and welcome to the Foxhole cast, an all for the game reread podcast. I'm Una.
And I'm Nate.
Today we'll be covering the second half of Chapter 4 of the Foxhole Court, in which Neil finds Andrew and Kevin at the court at night, and Wymack gives Neil a crash course on the Japanese mafia.
Aw, yeah.
Initial thoughts on these chapters?
Initial thoughts. Well, on my note for page 67 says, interesting that basically nothing happens for the middle 40 pages. Just chilling, no big game yet. So I guess that's my main thought.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't quite true. We learn a lot and we see some character development, but
it's mostly exposition dumps. Yeah. Before we get into it, I've got an ask here from our anonymous read-along buddy.
Excellent.
They actually sent this back in January when we were about to record the first half of Chapter 4, and then for some reason, we didn't include it in that episode. Maybe they sent it in too late. I don't know. But this is what they sent in. Anonymous asked, Well, turns on dusty e-ink Kindle. Welcome back to the internet, you two. It warms the heart good to hear the both of you ranting and raving about gay runaway sports boys and their cigarettes.
Aww.
So cute. They said, I will confess, I did read up to Chapter 6, but I took notes, so be looking out for those. For now, my reactions to Chapter 4. Nikki pretty much said, readers, ship me with anyone. Fan artists, ship me with anyone. You know, for as much multi-shipping as there is in this fandom, Nikki does not get included in a lot of ships.
That's true. I feel like he's got his canon boyfriend.
Husband.
Oh my god, yeah, they're married.
Or fiance. They're gonna get married. Yeah, and people pretty much are like, yeah, Nikki's off with Eric.
Yeah.
It's fine. Include Nikki in more ships, 2K25.
Yes, it's been long enough.
Yeah. Anyway, the ask goes on. Also, anyone want to take a stab? At who else is on Nikki's list besides Kevin? I still don't know. What celebrities were popular back then?
Yeah, in 2006?
Yeah.
Okay, 2006. My Chemical Romance. That's the only thing I know about 2006 is that My Chemical Romance was there.
Let's see, who was big? We'd have to look at what movies were coming out.
Yeah.
I want to say Brad Pitt.
Oh, you're so right.
I want to say
Leo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
Yeah, when did Titanic come out?
That was the 90s, right?
Oh, wow. Well, he's still been popular.
Yeah, he's still cute.
Yeah.
Anyway, they say, does Andrew have a thing with knives? He just seems like such an edgelord. I don't care enough about Exy to hate it. Sure, Jan. God, this guy can be so corny. I'm not a math problem, but I'll still solve you. And just like that, I'm back in.
This person just needs to take over the podcast.
They sign off, your Anon reader. Thank you so much for writing in. We also got an ask because just earlier today, I asked people to send us their second half of Chapter 4 thoughts, and Tumblr user of Your Silent Reverie asked, not really a hot take, but Andrew aggressively flirting with Neil throughout this whole chapter is so funny because Neil is so oblivious. But I'll still solve you? Crazy work on Andrew's part. Can't wait to get to that part.
And Neil's just like, man, this guy's so fucking annoying.
They say, also, I really like the introduction to Jean we get in this chapter. It's super short, but I think it hints a lot at how complicated their relationship is. This chapter is also just wild in how much info it just dumps on the reader. Anyways, looking forward to the episode.
Yay.
I super agree, and I think we should just get into it.
Let's get into it.
Where we left off, Neil had just gotten scolded by Wymack for blowing out his arms while trying to score against Andrew. This part of the chapter begins with, it took Neil 2 weeks to decide he'd never meet Kevin's standards. Basically because Neil is working really hard at Exy, but Kevin is impossible to please. The only upside is that Kevin is showing no signs of recognizing Neil for who he really is. Neil goes on runs around campus twice a day and works out constantly, but he still has trouble sleeping at night because he stays up thinking about the day's mistakes. One night, he gets up and heads to the stadium at 2 a.m. to clear his head. The narration mentions that he takes Perimeter Road, which Sakovich took from Clemson University in real life.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I read this in a 2021 article by Rebecca West in Clemson's student newspaper titled All for the Game, a Clemson-inspired indie cult classic.
Oh my god, you sent that to me. I totally forgot about that.
It's a really interesting article because, I mean, it's written from the perspective of a Clemson student, so they're like understanding all of these references that we wouldn't get because we didn't go to the school, but like apparently in these books there's like a clock tower mentioned, and that's a thing at Clemson, and like Fox Tower is a building that would have had like a similar thing at the time that Nora Sakovich was going to school there, but that building doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, wow.
So it's really like a snapshot of Clemson at the time of Sakovich's being there.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Will this book be a like historical artifact someday? Like how you can look in the Bible and be like, well, there were sandals. They had sandals at this time.
I feel like if future historians needed to learn more about what Clemson University's campus was like, there would be more reputable sources than the All for the Game series.
That's fair. That's fair. And that's why we need to destroy all of those sources.
So this is the one source of truth. When Neil gets to the court, the lights are already on, and he remembers that he passed the cousin's car on the way in. Neil finds Kevin on the court, honing his right-handed aim by trying to rebound balls off a specific spot on the wall. It says, watching Kevin going at it in the middle of the night, fierce and merciless, was almost enough that Neil forgave him. Kevin was more demanding of himself than he was of anyone around him. He set his standards impossibly high and tried for them with everything he had, and he didn't understand why others wouldn't do the same. Which I really love.
Yeah.
I do wish that maybe we had, like, not been fed that information about Kevin, and we were maybe shown that a little bit more before Neil kind of sums it up for us.
That's true. I feel like we could have even just seen him doing that and not had Neil think that.
It could have been a little more subtle.
Yeah.
Of, like, Neil noticing how hard Kevin is pushing himself and then leaving the interpretation of Kevin was more demanding of himself, etc., to the readers. Mm-hmm. Or just make that, like, a later observation that Neil has. I guess Neil's whole thing is that he's pretty good at reading people, though.
That's true. Yeah, it's like, I think that's one thing that we get from Neil's perspective. Mm-hmm. Like, he is always trying to figure out what everybody's deal is. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense that he would think that, but it's also just like, cool. Now we understand Kevin's motivations. Good thing we took care of that, and we can get to the real important stuff, which is a detailed but incorrect explanation of how the Yakuza works.
Yeah, exactly. Suddenly, Neil realizes that someone is watching him, and he doesn't have to turn around to know it's Andrew. Neil asks if Andrew will play with Kevin and points out it would benefit Kevin more if he did. Andrew is completely uninterested in this. Neil finally turns around and finds a, quote, sober Andrew sitting among the stadium seats. Neil can tell Andrew's off his meds by the blank expression on his face, by the way. Just normal real life things.
I also, so Andrew stops taking his drugs to sleep. So my questions here were, how often does he take them then? Like, that they work so short that he can stop taking them to sleep. And how would they ever show up in his piss if that was the case? Like, show up that he's not taking it if, like, he can stop taking it at night and it immediately wears off so that he can sleep. And then they're like, Andrew might get drug tested and they'll know he's not off his meds. And you just be like, well, I was going to take a nap. So
that's what I was thinking too. Yeah. Like, he could just, like, is someone going to roll up right now and be like, you're off your meds? And he's like, I need to sleep, man. And like, would that hold up? It's because it's fake. It's not real.
Right.
Nothing makes sense about Andrew's meds. Neil notes Andrew's trademark black bands that cover his arms from wrist to elbow. Apparently they're a joke meant to help people tell the twins apart, but that doesn't explain why Andrew's wearing them in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I really think that doesn't explain anything. Like, that's the dumbest explanation. Is like, oh, it's a joke so people can tell me and my brother apart. Like, first of all, why would Andrew want anybody to be able to do that? Because it's way funnier if they can't.
Right.
Second of all, they don't have, like, different haircuts or anything.
This is what I'm saying. Like, in the second chapter, when Andrew picks up Neil from the airport and he pretends to be Aaron, and then they like switch back when they get to Palmetto, like, are Andrew and Aaron just dressing the same? Like,
right?
Do they have the exact same haircut? And if so, is Andrew the one enforcing that? Or is it just like Aaron is like, fuck you, I like this haircut. I don't care if you have it too.
It's like every time they get a haircut, it's like a race to see who can get there first so they can choose their haircut. And then the other person has to like, wait, hang on. No, I don't know where I was going with this.
What if it's like they cut their hair separately and just by coincidence they choose the same haircut?
Yes, and every single time it's like an anime moment where they like walk up to each other in the hallway and they're both like, "Oh man."
Yeah. What if they have their stylist, they have the same stylist, and the stylist is pranking them by giving them the exact same haircuts.
And they don't know that they have the same stylist.
Yes.
They never are at the barbershop at the same time.
You could write a fanfic about this.
Oh my god, yeah.
Ooh, what if Nikki cuts their hair?
Yes. But I feel like he would get them the same haircut, and Andrew would be like, I'll fucking kill you. And Nikki would be like, no, it's not the same haircut. Look at these subtle details. And Andrew would be like, well, I guess he knows more about hair because he's gay. So.
I feel like Andrew would be wanting them to look the same, though.
Okay, so
I feel like Aaron is the one who wouldn't want to look like Andrew.
Okay, and he's the straight one. So he's like, okay, I guess Nikki knows more about hair because he's
But yeah, no, the black armbands. I always thought it was kind of silly to describe them as a joke to tell it. Like, it's not really a joke. It's more of like it's a weird gimmick to tell them apart, but it's not exactly a joke. Like,
that's true.
What's the punchline there? But yeah, that's not the real reason anyway.
Yeah.
We learn later. Andrew has his knives in there, and also in a later book, we learn that he's covering up his scars. So Andrew casually reveals that he has a knife hidden inside one of his armbands. And I was thinking these have to be like pretty skinny knives, right?
Yeah, I never really knew how to picture this.
I always pictured them as like those skinny, tiny throwing knives that don't really have like a hilt, you know?
Okay, I think I know what you're talking about.
Because anything bigger than that would be like chunky.
Yeah, I kind of imagined it, like, first of all, I didn't imagine the armbands as, like, one smooth thing. I kind of imagined it as, like, a bunch of armbands or, like, a thing that was, like, wrapped around, like, a bandage.
Oh, interesting.
Because I feel like that would make more sense. Like, I didn't imagine he, like, just, like, pulls knives out that are tucked under, like, different parts of the armband.
I picture it as, like, like a really long glove, but no hand part, just the arm part. But then inside of that, there's like a second layer of cloth or whatever.
Okay.
And then that's where the knives live. And to be able to fit in there and not be noticeable from the outside, it would have to be a pretty slim knife.
Yeah, you're right.
Especially if he's got multiple on him.
Right? Because I kind of just imagined that, like, it's a big, like, hunting knife or pocket knife, and we're just kind of supposed to believe that it's not noticeable.
Yeah, no, I always pictured it would have to be very slim.
I think that makes more sense.
Neil asks, is that your slow attempt at suicide, or do you actually have sheaths built into those? And Andrew just replies, yes. I'm like, are we supposed to... it's a funny response, I guess, but, like, the implications of that are, like, I feel like Neil should have maybe thought about what that meant a little bit more.
Yeah, true.
Instead of just, like, dismissing it as, like, oh, Andrew's just making a joke or being silly.
I feel like right now in this part of the book, Neil is kind of dismissive of Andrew as just, like he doesn't know him well yet. He's like, yeah, Andrew's the unpredictable, violent one. He's going to say weird shit to piss people off. And he doesn't really consider that, like, there is a grain of truth in Andrew's lies.
That's true. Yeah, at this point. Because we know that in the past, Andrew was suicidal. So when he says, is that your slow attempt at suicide? And Andrew says, yes, there is a grain of truth to that.
Right.
That we don't learn until later. But right now, he's kind of just making a joke, but it's not enough of a joke to get ignored.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird enough that Neil should have been like, care to expand upon that? Like,
Elaborate.
Elaborate, please? Neil notices that it's a different knife than the one Andrew threatened Nikki with and asks how many he has, then points out how much trouble Andrew could get himself and the team in if a referee catches him with a weapon during a game. Andrew then reveals his apathy for Exy, saying he only plays because it's, quote, slightly less boring than living is.
God. Also, I just want to say, when Neil asks Andrew how many knives he has, Andrew's response is enough, and I think that's hilarious.
That's right, I forgot about that. Enough for what, Andrew? We never really learned the answer to that question. Like,
that's
how many?
True.
How many he has? It's just like a different one every time.
Yeah.
I do love the trope of like character who is armed to the teeth just keeps pulling out weapons from everywhere and there's no end to the weapons they pull out. Yeah, love that trope. So after Andrew says, slightly less boring than living is, Neil, of course, can't understand that because Exy is his whole life. He asks, isn't it fun? And Andrew calls Exy pointless and references the first time he met Kevin, when Kevin asked him the same thing in an attempt to recruit him for the Ravens. This is a scene that you can read in Nora Sakovich's extra content if you want to read the first time that Kevin and Andrew meet and they play Exy together. And Kevin is like, don't you want to play Exy? Isn't it fun? It's a great scene. It's from Aaron's POV.
Ooh.
If you want to read it, you can go to thefoxholecast.tumblr.com/foxarchive and click the link called Kevin and Andrew. Neil tries to tell Andrew that he has real talent, but Andrew just deflects by changing the subject. He describes how Kevin promised Wymack and the school board that Neil would be a champion. Neil's first reaction is to think that Andrew is lying to mess with him. Then he thinks Kevin must have lied to the board, and there's only one reason Kevin would do that, because he knows Neil's true identity. And then we get this iconic exchange.
You're lying, Neil said at last, because he needed that to be the truth. Kevin hates me.
Or you hate him, Andrew said. I can't decide. Your loose ends aren't adding up.
I'm not a math problem.
But I'll still solve you.
Wah, wah, wah. That wasn't the appropriate stinger.
And then as Kevin starts cleaning up the court, you are a conundrum, Andrew said.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Andrew said as he slipped past Neil without a look back. I need a new toy to play with.
I'm not a toy.
I guess we'll see. Oh, man. Yeah, no, iconic exchange. It's just so, I don't even know how to describe. It's loaded, it's heated, it's intense.
And Neil doesn't even know all the sexual tension that's happening.
No, Neil is completely not, he's not part of it. Kevin comes over and asks Neil why he's here, and when Neil replies, to practice, Kevin says, as if it will help you any. Which is rude, but it comforts Neil because it confirms that Andrew was lying. Kevin starts taking off his gear and handing the pieces to Andrew, which always reminded me of, like, a squire helping his knight with his armor, you know?
Oh my god, you're so right.
Like, it's giving Arthur and Merlin right now. I always thought that. Anyway, Neil sticks around the court to have a fun flashback about his mom Mary's death. The story is that Neil and Mary ran into Neil's father, Nathan, in Seattle, and Mary got hurt before they managed to escape. They made it all the way to California before she stopped the car on a beach, which is like an 8-hour drive, by the way.
Oh, damn.
I looked it up.
Nice.
The narration says, she made him repeat every promise she'd ever dragged out of him. Don't look back, don't slow down, don't trust anyone. Be anyone but himself, and never be anyone for too long. By the time Neil understood she was saying goodbye, it was too late.
That kills me. Yeah. That last line.
Yeah, really rough.
Like, damn.
The narration includes a few really striking descriptions in this part, like how Mary's abdomen felt like stone when Neil touched her, and when he tried to pull her out of the car, her dried blood on the car seat sounded like ripping Velcro, which is just visceral and a really good description. He dumped all their gasoline on the car, set it on fire, watched as it burned, filled a backpack with her scorched bones, walked 2 miles away, and buried her in the sand. And I feel like the first couple times that I read this book, it didn't really register to me how gruesome that is.
Yeah. I always forget that he buries her bones. Like, I'm just like, yeah, he burns her in the car. But no, he does that, and then he touches his own mom's bones.
Yeah, like charred flesh and everything, and loading up a backpack, walking away. Like, that is beyond fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, I always forget the part about him burying her bones. Like, it would be fine if he just scorched the car, but like sticking around the entire time it burns, which must have taken a long time, I feel like.
Yeah, and I've always heard that burning human flesh has a very distinct smell.
Yeah, and then he has to like wait for it all to cool down before he can start digging through the wreckage and like pulling out her bones. Like, it would still be very hot even after it stopped burning.
That's true. But do you think he was like, he wasn't crying? Do you think he was just like dissociating, or he was crying?
I can imagine he was probably dissociating. Yeah.
So now for my nitpicks.
Yes.
First of all, he describes his mother's injuries as he says, like, her kidneys was punctured, her liver was punctured, and like he knows that something happened internally because of the disturbing distended abdomen discussion. But I'm like, how does he know specifically what happened? Because he doesn't even fully remove her from the car. And it's not like he had time to get her an autopsy before he burned her corpse. I'm like, is he just guessing? And he's like, yeah, it was her kidneys and liver. Or like, why does he say those things specifically when it could just be like, yeah, she got stabbed and died?
I assumed it was like he judged from the placement of the stab that he witnessed, that he could like guess which organs were affected.
Okay, nice.
How specific does he get? I forget.
Let me check, because he definitely says kidneys. He says kidneys, liver, and intestines. Okay, he says he hadn't known she was bleeding out on the inside. A kidney and her liver ruptured, her intestines bruised beyond repair. So ruptured seems very specific, and I don't know how intestine bruising works.
I wouldn't know either.
Yeah. Okay, we got to get some intestines. But yeah, I don't know. It seems maybe this is just stuff that he knows, like, from years of like being on the run and seeing people getting tortured. But like, just because you get stabbed and stuff doesn't mean that it like, what's it mean when something ruptures? I feel like that's like exploding more than getting stabbed.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. That's definitely above my pay grade.
Yeah. But okay, so yeah, I just kind of wonder like why it's such specific things when it would be much easier to just say, yeah, she was bleeding out. It wasn't good.
Yeah.
Because it makes you wonder like, how does he know that?
Right. Maybe like Sakovich wrote it in details to like illustrate how Neil kind of knows how bad it was going, or like he only learns how bad it is after it's too late. Okay.
Or maybe I just thought, I just realized when you said the details, so like how well he still remembers this specific moment also.
Yeah, just the vividness of it, and like if he does have medical knowledge, it's because he was on the run with his mom and stuff like that. All
right, but my second nitpick is not explained by any of this. So he says he burns the car using every emergency case of gasoline they bought along the way. So first of all, I learned this recently. Gasoline expires. Like, you can't just store gas forever. Hang on, I need to Google this just to make sure.
That makes sense. I don't think I've heard that, though.
Yeah, wait, let me check. Because I think if you're like, have a lawnmower and you take it out of the garage next year, you put it in the garage for the winter and then you take it out, you need to put in new gas because the old gas won't work.
Oh, interesting.
Let me make sure. Okay, it can go bad in a few months when it's in the car, and it can last about 6 months if you store it. And it says, while old gasoline normally can still burn, it may cause your engine to run poorly. So apparently, like, even the burningness of gasoline can be in doubt. Anyway.
I don't think it would have been that old, though.
That's true.
For gas. Like, if they're on the run constantly and they're driving, like, 8 hours a day to get away from Nathan.
Yeah. whatever. I was just wondering, like, why they keep picking up, like, more and more emergency gasoline. I'm just, like, just adding it to, like, their collection of, like, a bunch of gasoline in there. Like, first of all, that's, like, if you get into a car crash, it's, like, one of those, have you ever seen those pictures of, like, people who put propane tanks on their bikes, and they're like, if we get in a car crash, we're both going down.
Oh, my God.
But it just kind of confused me that they're, like, picking up a little bit of gas at a time. I guess it would look suspicious to, like, get a bunch of gas cans at once.
I assumed that it was, like, they stock up in case of emergency, like, in case they can't get to a gas station or they aren't going to be able to stop because someone's chasing them.
Okay.
Like, they won't be able to, like, find a gas station. It's just good to have extra on hand.
Okay,
but
yeah.
I don't think it was, like, old. Like, they would get through it eventually.
Okay, I don't know. I was just, like, it was just confused. Hang on, let me look at the line again.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, at heart, I'm the guy who does Cinema Sins. Nobody has ever seen me and the Cinema Sins guy in the same room. But yeah, I was just like, why did they buy a bunch, like, in little bitty pieces? How are they keeping it all in their car?
I assumed it was one of those red, like, gas cans. Like,
yeah.
It's, like, a lot of gas.
Yeah, but, like, they're big. Like, you just have a bunch of those, like, in your car.
For emergencies.
Okay. I don't know. I was just like, sounds fake. But maybe it wasn't fake. Maybe I'm the fake one.
My favorite thing about all of this is that it happened less than a year ago for Neil. So it's not even that long ago that he had to do this.
I always forget that. I always fucking forget that. Because we get so much detail about his life between then and now.
Yeah.
That it feels like he's been in Millport for a while. But no.
No, just like less than a year. So he's very much still grieving his mom and recovering from the trauma of watching her die and burning her body and then burying her bones. Like, that's a lot, and it did not happen that long ago. Like, he is not recovered from that at all. He has not processed that in a healthy way.
Neil, we gotta do some cognitive behavioral therapy for this.
Anyway, back in the present, Neil thinks about how his dream of playing Exy is just temporary because he is nothing and no one. After practicing on the court alone until sunrise, he falls asleep on one of the couches in the lounge. At noon, he wakes up and heads back to Wymac's apartment, but before he steps inside, he hears Wymac and Kevin having an argument. There's bodies hitting walls and glass shattering. Kevin is having an absolute meltdown, and in a bit we learn that this is about the Ravens switching to the Foxes district, but Neil doesn't know that yet. Kevin tells Wymac that someone could pay off his scholarship and take him home, and at first he says he can't go back, then switches abruptly to saying he has to go back so he can beg for forgiveness.
God.
That line when he goes, like, he's like, I can't go back, I have to go back. What if I don't go back, it'll be worse. Like, it's honestly astonishing how much I care about Kevin now just because of the Sunshine Court books.
Right? Before I was like, yeah, whatever, Kevin's got some problems. Let's move on to the important part. But, like, Kevin is, like, having a breakdown in every single one of these books. And it's just kind of like, well, that's what he's doing.
Yeah, because Neil does not give a shit. Neil is just like, oh, Kevin's freaking out again. Kevin went upstairs to have a panic attack again.
Neil, like, just got done burning his mom's bones. He's like, Kevin is such a drama queen.
What a baby. He can't even...
I bet he could never burn his mom's bones.
So Wymac tells him, you're not going anywhere, but Kevin shouts, I can't tell Rico no. Wymac threatens to call Betsy's office so Kevin can tell Andrew he's thinking about going back to Rico, which shuts Kevin up. Which I love that Andrew is not even, like, he's just this force that's like, he grounds Kevin. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not even that Andrew, I have more thoughts about this and we can talk about them when we get to, like, Kevin and Andrew's deal that they made.
Okay.
But I like how Andrew's whole thing about sticking by Kevin's side and, like, defending him against the Moriyamas, like, it's not really about Andrew physically being able to fight all of these, like, mafia members or whatever, but he's, like, not a calming presence exactly for Kevin, but, like, a grounding anchor.
Yes. Like, So what you just said reminds me of something that I read on r/Red Pill Christians. That like is talking about like when your wife is pregnant and she's freaking out. Don't freak out. She'll think you're a little bitch. What you got to do is be completely calm and pretend that nothing's happening. And then she will be like comforted by your steady presence. And it was a whole thing other than that. But I feel like kind of the way that Andrew is like he seems very emotionless a lot of the time. He doesn't care. He underreacts to things. It's probably very comforting for Kevin, who's always freaking out. And then he sees Andrew and he's like, well, Andrew's going to handle everything. Andrew's got me.
Right. Yeah, I think that Andrew is less of a guard dog and more of an emotional support animal.
You're so right.
You know what I'm saying?
You're so right. When they have finals, they bring in Andrew and everybody lines up outside the library so they can pet him.
He would stab everyone. No, it's just for Kevin.
Yes.
It's just Kevin that he is emotionally supporting.
Yes. If anybody wants to draw Kevin and Andrew's wearing like one of those service dog vests. And it can be however horny or not horny you want it to be.
Now you put that out into the world.
Just a thought.
Be careful what you wish for. You can't unring a bell. You put that out into the universe, anyone could pick up that call. Oh man, where were we? Wymack tells Kevin to let him and Andrew worry about Rico fuckface.
Yeah, I love that because it's not really like, it doesn't flow very well at all. Like that's not... It's
not really like a great insult, but it's hilarious.
Right? I feel like that fuckface Rico would have made more sense. It's not like...
You're right.
But it sounds like it's supposed to be a pun, but it's like, it's not.
Rico fuckface. Yeah, you're right. That fuckface... Like... It's like, are you saying that fuckface is his last name?
Yeah.
Are you... I can't even. It's so silly.
Maybe it's like their secret nickname for him, like Rico Fuckface Moriyama.
Yeah, his little nickname in quotes. Wymack says that the ERC isn't going to break the news about the district change until everyone's back on campus in June. This is because when Kevin transferred to Palmetto, rabid Ravens fans harassed the Foxes, and this news is sure to cause a similarly intense reaction. Wymack tells Kevin to lie to Andrew until the news breaks officially, I guess because Andrew might react in a way that will get him taken off the team.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, what did you think of that part?
I was more thinking, like, how is Kevin going to lie to Andrew? And is Andrew going to be fooled, or is he going to be like, okay, Kevin wants me to pretend I don't know about this? I didn't really think about why. I was like, sure, all right.
Yeah. I think Wymack is implying that, because he says something like, the ERC is looking for a reason to take Andrew away from us.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So I think that Wymack is afraid that if Andrew finds out about the district change before it's public, he's going to make some kind of big scene, and it's going to break the news. Like, he's going to leak the news.
Okay.
Or do something violent. Or just be Andrew.
Yeah. I like the part when Andrew just says, I'm Andrew, and Andrew's all over the place.
Kevin asks to use Wymack's phone to call Jean, and Neil considers leaving before he's noticed, but then Kevin starts speaking in French, which Neil can understand. Kevin just says, tell me it isn't true, tell me he didn't, and then hangs up when he hears the answer. Which is really fucked up if you think about it, because this is the first time he's talked to Jean since he left Evermore.
That is wild. And the fact that Jean picks up immediately and tells Kevin what he needs to know.
Yeah. Just because, like, in Sunshine Court, we learn more about the effect that Kevin leaving had on Jean.
Right.
And it's really wild for Kevin to just call Jean up and in French be like, tell me he didn't, like, trying to talk to him about Rico. When they got in trouble, Jean got in trouble for speaking French
so right.
and teaching French to Kevin. Like, that's gotta cut deep.
Yeah. And also, like, was Jean, like, in a place where he could safely answer a phone call from Kevin? Or did he just pick up because...
That's what I was wondering, too. Did Jean reply in French? I am guessing probably not. He wouldn't have to.
Right. I guess he could have just said yes or no, but I feel like if Rico was there, he'd have been like, who's calling you, man?
Yeah, God, I need to know what's going on the other side of that phone call.
Right?
Wymack steps out of the room and sees Neil but doesn't say anything. He just retrieves a bottle of vodka from the kitchen, tells Kevin to drink, great coping mechanism, Dad, and takes Neil into the hallway to talk. Wymack reveals that Edgar Allan University, aka the Ravens, aka Castle Evermore, aka Kevin's old team/cult, put in a transfer request with the ERC. Starting in June, the Ravens are going to be in the same district as the Foxes. Now we turn to our sports consultant, John, to tell us about districts and transfers.
Take it away, John.
Hello, John Anderson here, your favorite sports consultant. In college athletics, schools are split into conferences, where they play that smaller group of schools regularly throughout the year, and then if they are good enough to make it to the whole country championship tournament at the end of the year, that's when they would play other teams from across the country. The way districts are split up is mainly due to location. So USC is in California, Edgar Allan and Palmetto State are on the East Coast. That's why those schools are not in the same district/conference. Like USC is not going to be able to regularly play Palmetto State because they're 3,000 miles away from each other. There are times when districts or conferences get reshuffled and switched around. It's almost always due to money and television. That's why this is honestly a pretty realistic part of All for the Game. Edgar Allan wants to switch conferences because they want to continue the rivalry with Kevin, and Edgar Allan is able to do this because they're the only XC team in West Virginia, so then they wouldn't be taking away competition from other teams in West Virginia by moving. Also, having them compete against Palmetto State, and especially Kevin, would increase revenue for both of them, honestly, because everybody wants to see this rivalry. Yeah, so this is honestly kind of realistic. I don't have any objections to this. Back to you.
Thanks, John. Anyway, this news scares the shit out of Neil because it means he'll have to meet Rico in person on the court. Neil met Rico when they were kids, the same way he met Kevin when they were kids, and even though Kevin doesn't recognize Neil from back then, Rico might. Wymack says the ERC is into the idea of pitting Kevin and Rico against each other on the court because it'll be great publicity for the sport. Neil tries to ask if Wymack can protest the decision, but Wymack says the ERC won't spurn the Moriyama family, which includes Rico and his uncle Tetsuji, who is the Ravens coach. Wymack prepares Neil for some big news by telling him there's a secret that the Foxes know, and if it gets out, people could get hurt or killed.
Which I love, but he doesn't really give an, hang on, I need to turn to this page. So he says, people could get hurt if this gets out. People could die. And then does not immediately explain it, which I just think is so funny. He's like, okay, Neil, people could die.
And then he dumps a bunch of exposition that is not...
Yeah. He's just like, people could die. This is how the ERC works.
Yeah, this is what happened at the Winter Banquet last year. This is how Kevin broke his hand. And then he circles back to the Moriyamas, after all of that.
Okay, let's circle back to people will die later.
Yeah, literally. He knows how to, hook the audience.
Yes.
He's burying the lead. I think he's stalling. I think Neil makes a comment about how Wymack is stalling, telling him part of this story.
Nice.
So I think it would make sense if he was trying to stall things.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Wymack reveals that Kevin didn't really come to the Foxes just because he was following Andrew, like everyone thinks. The way Wymack tells this story to Neil is kind of mixed up and confusing, so I've taken the liberty of putting everything in chronological order for us.
Classic you, did you make a spreadsheet for this?
No, I totally could though. Don't tempt me. So this past winter, which would be 6 months ago, I guess, the ERC started to suspect that Kevin was purposefully underperforming so as not to outshine Rico on the court. In response to these accusations, Tetsuji pitted Rico and Kevin against each other, and Kevin let Rico win. As soon as Tetsuji dismissed them that night, Rico broke Kevin's hand. In later books, we learn more about Kevin's daring escape from Evermore, but Wymack only describes how Kevin showed up at his hotel room during the Southeastern District's winter banquet with his bloody hand. He refused to go to the hospital, so Wymack brought him back to Palmetto State with the rest of the Foxes.
Just minor detail, it's so wild to me that not exactly wild, it's just so interesting to me that Kevin, who playing Xe is so important to him, is so afraid of Rico that he won't go to the hospital to get his hand fixed, even though, possibly this is, a thing that requires, surgery, as opposed to just, we're just gonna wrap it up and ice that bad boy.
Right. I'm wondering, why is Kevin afraid to go to a hospital about it?
That's true. I guess, he thinks the Moriyamas could, find out he's there and bring him back.
Oh, yeah, I guess at that point he would be, on the run from them a little bit.
That's true. And he would maybe be sedated.
Yeah, he needs to go to the Foxes for, protection.
Yeah.
I always thought that Rico broke Kevin's hand at a banquet, and that, Wymack was at the same banquet, but that's not true. There are different banquets for each district. So the Ravens, who were not in the Southeastern District with the Foxes yet, would have had a different winter banquet.
Okay.
So the night that Rico breaks Kevin's hand is not at all related to a banquet.
Okay.
Kevin just happens to go that night to the Southeastern District's banquet to find Wymack.
Okay.
And that's how he, knows that Wymack is there.
Nice. That makes sense. That's an easy way to find him.
Yeah.
Just, running across the country. Not across the country, they're in the same area, but zooming on the run, broken hand, no painkillers, probably chugging vodka. Or no, wait, not yet.
Not yet, because Ravens don't drink.
He's just raw dogging this escape. Hand broken, dick out. That's not true.
Wymack tells Neil that Rico breaking Kevin's hand wasn't the only abuse he went through at Evermore. There's this great little aside in the narration when Neil and Wymack both agree that they don't believe in family. It says, Neil finally understood that look Wymack sent him in Millport, that perfect understanding that undid Neil's defenses. Neil searched his face, looking for the story behind that exhaustion. Whatever broke Wymack happened so long ago he wasn't even bitter over it anymore. But he was definitely still cracked if he poured so much time into the Foxhole court.
That's good.
That's good, right?
Yeah. I also like that Wymack says, I don't believe in family. And he'll later find out that Kevin is his son.
Oh, shit, you're so right. Yeah, and he's, talking about Kevin, having Rico as family, and Neil's I don't believe in family, and Wymack's me neither. You're so right. That's good shit. I love this kind of peek into the character that is Wymack, because within these books we never learn what his backstory is. It's in the extra content, but Neil never learns Wymack's backstory. Right. And I feel like this is a good way to do characterization, how earlier we were talking about Neil's description of Kevin practicing at the court at night and how he holds himself to higher standards than anyone else and blah blah blah. That was a little too specific and on the nose, but then this is a way for Neil to be observant and intuitive about Wymack, but not actually kind of get the thing right exactly.
You're so right. And I feel it's because he relates Wymack's experience back to him, which he could have done with Kevin. He could have been wow, Kevin works hard at this just like I do.
Yeah.
But instead he did it a different way.
Yeah. His observations about Kevin seem a little bit more meta.
Yeah.
You're telling us what kind of character Kevin is and what drives him, but you're doing it in a way that is, I don't know how to say this exactly, but it's a little bit too much in the Kevin description, but then this is a perfect little glimpse into what Wymack is and what motivates him. Anyway, the reason Rico never got punished for hurting Kevin is because he's a Moriyama. And now it's time to kick this exposition dump into overdrive.
Yeah.
Here's what we learned from Wymack. The Moriyama family is made up of two parts, the main family and the branch family. The main family consists only of firstborn sons, and the branch family is everyone else. Kengo Moriyama is the head of the main family, and his two sons are Ichiro and Riko. Ichiro's the eldest, so he gets to be in the main family with Kengo. They live in New York City and run an international trading company that Sakovich didn't bother coming up with a name for. Kengo's younger brother Tetsuji and youngest son Riko are in the branch family. The main family and the branch family don't talk to each other. Riko has never met his dad. His uncle Tetsuji is his legal guardian. The branch family doesn't get to make decisions about the main family's business, but they do get some of the profits, so they still have a lot of money. But here's the fun part. The Moriyamas don't just run an international trading company, they run a crime empire because they are a Japanese mafia group that came to America a couple decades ago.
Holy shit!
I just love that, like, throughout this whole, like, we're going to talk about the Moriyamas in a second, but just throughout this whole explanation, Wymack is, like, pausing to check in with Neil and being like, are you following me so far? And it's like, he's, like, conscious of the fact that he's exposition dumping, and, like, Sakovich knows that this is so much information, and Wymack is, like, using his hands to, like, draw, like, branches in the air or whatever, and it's like, yeah, we need a diagram for this shit, and Sakovich is, like, aware of that, but, like, did not take the time to make it better.
That's so
Make
funny.
it easier to understand.
I'm envisioning this as, like, one of those sequences in a movie where, like, they ask a character to explain something, and the character's explaining for so long that it's, like, putting, like, multiple, like, scenes of them talking and gesticulating but silently, like, over each other, like, like panning across to a bunch of people looking, like, really confused.
Like a montage.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Exactly. Oh, man. Okay, let's talk about the Moriyamas.
Yeah.
You have done some research into what the real life Yakuza are like.
Yeah, I did extensive research. I read the TV tropes page for the Yakuza for some reason. And then I went and searched Yakuza facts in Spotify and listened to 2 podcasts that were actually YouTube videos that were made into podcasts. So sometimes it would be like noises and I'm like, what's that? And then it's like, oh, it's a video. But so interestingly, most of the stuff in this book is bullshit. Actually, the most realistic thing I would say is the part where the Moriyamas are a crime family who immigrated to the US and continue doing crime stuff with other crime gangs. Because apparently that's a real thing. Like, the Yakuza is mostly doing their thing in Japan, but they do have, like groups in, like, Hawaii and in New York and just, like, randomly
interesting.
Like mostly on the West Coast in Hawaii, but, like, also there are people in, like, other cities who are just, like, working with the gangs that are there and just doing their thing. Because from what I understand, the hierarchy of the Yakuza is, like, there's people at the top, but they aren't necessarily, like, all talking. Like, it's not like there's, like, all the top groups are talking to each other exactly.
Right.
Like, you can go and do your own little thing. And, like, within your group, there'll be a hierarchy. But it's not like some other guy is going to come over from, like, a different country and be like, hey, you're fucking up.
Okay.
I think. So about the parts that are bullshit. I'm not going to actually, like, give a summary of what the Yakuza are because, 1, I'm bad at summarizing things like an AO3 author. And 2, I don't actually, like, I have not actually learned or retained that much information. But I can confidently say that, like, at least 2 things about how the Yakuza are portrayed here are bullshit. 1 is that it's a family, like, literally blood family. The Yakuza, their structure is, like, the person at the top is the Obayan, which is, like, the father. And then he has sons, and those sons have, like, brothers and shit. But it's not family in any way. Like, they're not actually related. It's just, like, the honorific titles.
Interesting.
And one thing that I thought was really interesting is that it's not, like, the positions in the Yakuza are not hereditary. Like, the thing of, like, Ichiro's going to inherit from his dad once his dad dies is, like, not true. You actually have to, like, work your way up in the Yakuza. Like,
that makes sense.
Like, you're climbing the ladder at a business.
Yeah.
Because that's one big thing is that it's like a gang, but it's also kind of like a business. And they actually have a lot of power in Japan, partly because they do the thing that all gangs do, which is, like, we're actually preventing crime by being a gang here. and they like work with the government. They kind of, like, have an agreement with the government and, like, they'll be in charge in certain places. And
interesting.
Yeah. Although apparently, like, from what I understand, like, now the Japanese government is, like, more going after the Yakuza members, but it's just like, and also Yakuza members have worked with the CIA and the FBI.
Ooh.
Yeah. But yeah, so the inherited thing, Ichiro's title being passed down from his father is not true.
Yeah.
To at least how the Yakuza works in Japan, which I guess now that, like, if, like, Rico's family, like, came to the US and started their own, like, thing, I guess they could make all the rules they wanted, but at some point it would be like, well, this isn't really Yakuza. It's just, like, their own little gang that they're doing.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that I think is really, like, a big difference between what the Yakuza actually allow and what Rico's family does is the amount of, like, violence you're allowed to inflict and let people know that you're inflicting, which I thought was very interesting because in Japan, there's, like, way stricter gun control laws. And there's also laws for, like, a lot of other things, like knives. It's much more difficult to, like, have a knife or a gun as, like, a private citizen. So if you get caught with one of these things, or if you, like, if somebody figures out that you're using one of these things, that's not good. And also the Yakuza are, like, trying to, like, get, like, they sometimes need to work people over, like how a gang person would be like, tell me where the money is, and then punch him in the face. Like, is it safe? And, like, drill his teeth, like in Marathon Man.
Yeah, exactly.
But, like, it's bad. Like, you're not supposed to show that you're beating up people. So they specifically look for ways of, like, torturing people that won't leave any visible marks. So, like, one thing that I really remember is that they'll take, like, a plastic comb, like one of those cheap little plastic combs that they'd give you at a barbershop, and they flick it at your eye. Like, they pull it back and then let go of it, and it smacks you in the eyeball.
Oh my God.
And that shit does not feel good. So they'll just do that until you tell them whatever they want you to tell them.
What the hell?
Yeah, right? I'm like, so Rico would not, I don't think, be able to get away with like beating the shit out of all these people to the point where people are wondering, like, why does Jean need so much time off? Like, in the book, Ichiro eventually is like, he's too much of a wild card and, like, takes him out. But in the real Yakuza, they would be like, dude, get the fuck out way earlier than that.
Yeah, I would believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, from what you're saying and from what I have also read, it seems that the Yakuza are trying to at least maintain, like, a kind of respectability.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Rico does not do that.
Yeah, you're so right. Yeah, they don't call themselves Yakuza. They call themselves, there's a couple different names, but, like, they'll be like, their name means, like, we're really cool guys. We're, like, we're awesome.
Yeah.
But what was like, but yeah, they do business shit. And like how Kengo has, like, his fake business. Like, yeah. Or I guess it's a real, but anyway. But yeah, so some parts of this are realistic, like fake business and getting sick tattoos.
I've seen the tattoos.
Yeah, there was something else I was going to say that I forgot. Oh, yeah, one big thing is that just, like, a lot of the power that the Yakuza have in Japan is because that, like, they, like, are kind of, like, at least in the past, the government has kind of, like, worked with them or, like, kind of let them do their thing, and the government does their own thing, or they work together a little bit, and, like, there's, like, kind of an agreement of, like, how it's going to go so that the government doesn't move too much against them as long as some, like, standards are followed. So that would make sense that the Moriyamas would be, like, super powerful there. I feel like it's less clear here why they seem to have so much limitless power and, like, can get away with so much shit. Like, they have a lot of money coming in, so that buys them a lot of power. But it's not like, I don't know if they would have this, like, untouchable status that it seems like they have when they're really, like, a very small crime family. Because literally the main branch is just two guys. Like, it's just two guys. It's never explained, like, are there people working for them? Are there, like, other first sons, like, hanging out? Or is it literally just two guys?
Yeah.
Like,
okay, this is what I'm saying. We never get any information about how the Moriyamas actually work.
Right.
They're just there to be, like, cartoon villains.
You're so right.
And it's fucking racist.
Yeah.
Like, to just make these Japanese mafia villains who Rico is just this, like, uncaring sociopath.
Right.
And Tetsuji also just, like, they don't have any emotion.
Right.
They're just scary foreigners who are coming into America and bringing crime. Like, that is such a shitty stereotype.
And I was also thinking another stereotype is just, like, they also, the way that their family is organized. It's like, they don't really love each other. Everything is just a negotiation.
Yeah, it's all business.
Yeah.
Yeah, and only firstborn sons can be in charge.
Right.
It's like, dude, Sakovich, can we please take a step back and look at the implications of this?
Right.
Because, like, the Moriyamas are just cast as inherently dangerous and irredeemable, like, especially Rico is just like, seen as this irredeemable villain. And it's not just that they're criminals, because there are other criminals in these books. Neil's family is also criminal.
Right.
And they're coded as white. But, like, the Moriyamas are, like, foreign and secretive and...
Right.
Like, they're the worst out of all of they're the worst and most powerful.
Right. Like, yeah, they're a mysterious, immense amount of power that we're not supposed to question, like, how do they get that?
And they're secretly running everything. They're even in charge of the white mobsters. Like, can we please examine this? Yeah, it's just a really racist trope that, like, East Asian people are bringing secret evil into Western society. This has been a, like, historical justification for racism in the US. So instead of giving the Moriyamas, like, any internal conflict or humanity or complexity at all, they are just straight up villains, and it's just, like, this caricature of villainy.
You're so right. Like, it's just, like, these are the people who it's okay to hate. They just exist because we want to see our main characters feel emotions and deal with things.
Yeah, and we don't ever meet any of the Moriyamas except for Riko. We barely have any interactions with Tetsuji, and we have one scene with Ichiro at the very end of the third book.
Correction, 2 scenes.
And they are all, like, stereotypes of the cold, uncaring Japanese mobster, or, like, the master, like, literally Tetsuji getting called the master. Yeah, it's the worst. And yeah, there's no exploration of, like, actual Japanese values. There's no knowledge of what the Yakuza actually operate like. There's no references to language barriers or generational identity issues or any Japanese American history whatsoever.
Damn,
It's like they're not humans. They're just scary Japanese men in suits doing crimes.
Yeah.
And it's just the most surface level, like, oh, isn't this so cool and scary? And it's just...
you're so right.
Really misrepresenting, like, a lot of...
You're so
of
right.
things here. And there's no counterexamples. Like, we don't meet any, like, member of the Moriyama family who is, like, secretly trying to get out of the crime life, and there's no one showing any guilt about what they do, and
there's not even any other Japanese people in the book.
Literally the only Japanese characters, confirmed Japanese characters in these books are Yakuza,
or Japanese American, I guess, but yeah,
and it's like, aside from them, there's not really that many characters of color at all. And it's really, really shitty that, like, out of the handful of characters of color that you have, a grand portion of them are evil sociopaths and crime family murderers, you know?
Hey, it's editing, Una. Nate and I are mostly just talking about the original 3 books. The newer Sunshine Court books are more diverse.
So... yeah, just, like, everything of, like, they have their, you know, old-fashioned traditional Japanese names and their old-world connections and their codes of conduct, and it makes them seem menacing in a way that Neil's mobster family is not portrayed.
You're so right.
And, like, the Wesninskis are a whole other issue that we shan't get into, but, like, there's a very specific vibe going on with the Moriyamas that's, like, scary, foreign, danger.
I feel like the Wisninskis get more individuality in, like, it's not like this is the Wisninsky family, they all act like this. It's like we meet specific members with specific motivations. And they get more fleshed out.
Exactly. I mean, we have Neil and his mom. His mom has a backstory of, like, she comes from a British crime family, and she got married into this, and she never really liked Nathan Wesninsky, and then in the third book, we meet Lola and the 2 guys with her, I forget their names, Romero and Jackson?
I only remember Lola.
But they have, like, their own kind of personalities. And, like, even though Lola is also, like, an uncaring sociopath, she gets, like, more of a personality.
Yeah. Like, we really don't even meet, like, any low-level, like, people in the Moriyama family. Like,
yeah, because they're just supposed to be this, like, nebulous, all-seeing force.
Yes, yeah.
Like the Wesninskis are doing the dirty work or whatever, but the Moriyamas are running the show, and...
The Wisniewskis are a real red-blooded American crime family.
Yeah, they're not afraid to get their hands dirty.
They're pulling themselves up by the straps of people's flesh.
Anyway, we can move on now, but I'm glad that we talked about that.
If anybody has any, well, I guess you can say.
Yeah, absolutely. I asked earlier on Tumblr too, like, if anyone has any pertinent information about the Yakuza and how they actually work and how that is, like, accurate or not accurate to how they're portrayed in these books. And, like, we are specifically interested in hearing from Japanese fans and Japanese American fans about how they feel about the representation in these books. Yeah, would love to hear people's thoughts.
Hey, it's Editing Una, just chiming in with one final note before we move on. If you're interested in learning more about harmful stereotypes in fiction, you should check out writingwithcolor.tumblr.com. Writing with Color is a blog that gives advice on how to respectfully and responsibly write characters of color. They detail harmful stereotypes and how to avoid them, including in fantasy and sci-fi settings. One trope that applies to the Foxhole Court books would be the aloof Asian stereotype, and Writing with Color has a whole tag for it if you want to learn more. Again, that's writingwithcolor.tumblr.com.
Yeah, so...
There's not much of the chapter left after this.
Yeah. When Neil learns that Rico's family is into organized crime, just like his own family is, he suddenly understands a memory from his childhood. He was practicing Exy with Rico and Kevin, and the three of them got called upstairs to witness Neil's father murder someone. Sakovich mentions the context of this memory briefly in the extra content, and you can find it if you go to thefoxholecast.tumblr.com/foxarchive and click on the link that says, "Who is Rico Moriyama?"
Ooh.
Basically, the story is that some guy tried to kill Rico, and so they set Nathan the Butcher on him, and they had Rico watch, and Kevin and Neil were also there.
Also, I love that, like, it's not exactly funny, but, like, Neil's like, oh, I suddenly understand why that happened. It was because of organized crime. Like, what did he think the explanation was before?
Literally.
Oh, I guess that's just guys being dudes. Like, I feel like if I had a memory of, like, being, like, brought to a room to watch a guy killing some other dudes, I would be like, maybe that was, like, something shady going on. Like, I feel like I would have an inkling of, like...
But you weren't raised in a crime
family.
Oh,
that's true. Yeah, I guess for Neil, it is just guys being dudes.
Yeah, Neil's used to that shit.
Damn. Neil's like, guess it's Tuesday again.
Yeah, but he never knew how they'd gone from Exy to murder, or why Rico and Kevin were there. But now that he knows that Rico's family is, like, in that sphere of crime, he understands that he must have been at Castle Evermore with them.
Okay, that makes sense.
So his father, Nathan the Butcher of Baltimore...
Which is actually also what they call me.
Yeah, Nathan the Butcher of Baltimore controlled territory that would have neighbored West Virginia, where Edgar Allan University is. Neil figures this means his dad and Rico's dad were business partners. Later, we learn that that's not exactly accurate, but that is second book information that we don't need to get into right now. Wymack says that because Tetsuji raised Kevin to be an Exy star, Tetsuji and Rico see Kevin as, quote, valuable property, and any profit he makes belongs to the Moriyamas. So the whole point of the Ravens switching districts is so that they can cash in on the drama of pitting Rico against Kevin.
I actually didn't even realize that. I thought they were just doing it to fuck with Kevin.
I think it's a little bit of that.
Okay.
But their reasoning... Like, I can see Rico doing that, but the reason Tetsuji is getting in on this is, like, he wants to bring Kevin down.
Okay.
And he knows that will happen because Kevin's, like, recovering from his injury and he's on this terrible Fox. Like, the Fox's team is terrible. So if Rico goes up against him with the Ravens, like, they're bound to win. So that will... like, confirm that Rico is the best in the sport.
Okay.
And they won't have to worry about Kevin anymore, basically.
Okay. I do love, like, one, how she just lays out all these stakes. Like, technically, like, we understand why what is happening here and like the consequences of failure. And I just also love how Nora Sakovich made it so that like XC is not only important that we win the game, but it's fucking crucial that we win the big game because everything is riding on this.
It's life or death, guys.
I love how she like figured out how to do that. I love it.
It's so like sports anime.
Yeah.
But like another level.
Right? Like in Kuroko no Basketball, they're never like, if we fail, they're going to take Kuroko out back and shoot him like a horse.
Neil asks what would happen if Tetsuji told Kevin to stop playing, and Wymack says, I'd like to think Kevin would defy Tetsuji, but it's just as likely we'd never see him with a racket again. But the day Kevin stops playing forever is the day he dies. He has nothing else. He wasn't raised to have anything else. Do you understand? We cannot lose to the Ravens this year. Kevin won't survive it.
Damn.
Yeah, he wasn't raised to have anything else is like, I mean, we like to joke about how obsessed Kevin is with XE because it's hilarious, but also he's like that because of his upbringing.
That's so true.
And it's kind of fucked up if you think about it.
Yeah, just the fact that like, kind of like, I guess throughout a lot of the series, they're just trying to keep Kevin alive. Like, they don't really have time to be like, maybe you should get some hobbies, Kevin.
Yeah.
But just kind of the fact that like
there is nothing else. No one
right.
would ever consider trying to convince him to do that because it's just like, it's not possible.
Right. Yeah. Like he's set on this path and they have to be, it's like palliative care. Like, okay, Kevin's going to be obsessed with XC for the rest of his life. We better make sure he gets lots of XC.
Yeah. Neil doubts the Fox's ability to beat the Ravens, but Wymack seems to have hope. He warns Neil not to tell anyone about this, and Neil leaves to go for a run. Neil is convinced that the Moriyamas will know who he is if he gets on their radar, so he needs to run away before the Foxes face off against the Ravens. He knows if he were smart, he'd leave now before his presence on the team gets publicized, but he just can't do it.
Yeah.
The narration says, Neil had grown up wondering why Kevin and Rico were in that room 8 years ago, and how they'd overcome it. He'd wondered why their luck and circumstances were so different that they could become international stars while Neil's life spiraled so quickly out of control. He'd hated and worshipped them all his life, jealous of their successes and desperate for them to excel. Now it seemed he'd been wrong all along. Kevin hadn't escaped either. No matter what they did or who they became, maybe they never would.
Oh, yeah.
And then the chapter ends with him taking off running again, because there isn't any other way to end a chapter in the Foxhole courts. No, but I love how Neil is jealous of their successes and desperate for them to excel. He's like looking at them like, why couldn't I have that life? But like, if I can't, then at least they can have it. And he hates them, but he also like worships them. I love that dynamic.
Yes. Then he finds out that everything that he believed in so far was not true.
Right. Yeah. That they didn't actually get a life that was so great. That Kevin is also trapped in this.
And so is Rico, in a way.
Yeah, they're all trapped in this web.
Yeah.
I guess, do you have any final thoughts?
Ooh, let me see.
To wrap it all up?
My note for page 84. Why does Neil want to live so bad anyway?
He just wants to play XE.
That's okay.
That's his only purpose in life.
Okay. Yeah. I don't get it because I never play sports, but I respect it.
Actually, he's kind of like, he kind of wants to die. Like, he's doing, like, all of these things. Like, he knows that he's in trouble and he could die from this by sticking around and playing XE.
You're so right.
But he wants to play XE so bad.
I never considered that, like, yeah, he's acknowledging that, like, he could die. And he's like, all right, well.
Guess I'll die. Yeah, this was a chapter.
It certainly was.
Yeah, it was just a half a chapter.
Fuck.
We finally finished chapter 4.
Thank God. Next chapter, I have no memory of what happens.
Well, that's good, because next time we'll be covering the Wymack POV bonus chapter.
Oh, shit.
From the Rainbow Crate Special Edition of the Foxhole Court, which chronologically takes place between chapters 4 and 5.
Okay.
You can read those bonus chapters by going to thefoxholecast.tumblr.com/foxarchive and clicking the Rainbow Crate Special Edition bonus chapters link at the top. Originally, I was not going to share those chapters, but then Nora Sakovich actually reblogged the screenshots that someone took, to her Tumblr.
That's so funny. A writer for the proletariat.
Yeah. So Nora Sakovich wants you to read these, so go click that link and read these beautiful chapters. You can let us know your thoughts on Chapter 4, or look ahead and give us your thoughts on the YMAC POV chapter, or go ahead and skip right to Chapter 5. There's a lot going on in that one, too.
Oh, yeah.
Let us know your thoughts at thefoxholecasters@gmail.com or on social media. We are The Foxhole Cast on Tumblr, Instagram, and YouTube. Don't forget to follow us wherever you're listening. You can find all these links and more at thefoxholecast.card.co. Until next time.
Thanks for listening.
You are amazing.